every single time something's up with the Niners, and I'm wondering what's up with the Niners. We reach out to this man, and he kind enough to answer the bat signal once again from the Rich Eisen Show. The San Francisco 49ers beat reporter for NBC Sports Bay Area, Matt Maiocco, back on the program. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm trying to filter in all the anxiety and panic
Yes.
from 49er fans who are seeing all their players leaving this offseason.
Well, that's why I wanted to reach out to you. My first question to you is, how much is your phone blowing up from friends of yours who are diehard 49er fans who are reaching out to you as sort of a comfort station? You know what I mean? Right now, how is that working for you?
That
Right?
is it is working. And it's not only the guys who are leaving the 49ers that they're asking about. Up until last night, it was, when is Joey Bosa signing? And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And, I guess John Lynch, when we were there at the Combine, John Lynch kind of set the stage for this by saying that this was the year to kind of reset, recalibrate. Those are the words he used. And so I think he tried to kind of soften the blow for this. And a lot of these are predictable, but still, when reality strikes and you see all these guys leaving, starting with Deebo Samuel, but, Kyle Juszczyk, he was one of their first free agent signings, and all he's done in his 8 years with the 49ers is go to 8 Pro Bowls. And Dre Greenlaw and Charvarius Ward and Talanoa Hufanga. And I could go on and on and on, Rich, but your show will well, there it is.
There it is. Yeah. You go on
there
and
it is.
on.
I don't
There's a
have
whole
to say
second row on the graphic. There's a whole second row on the graphic, Matt. And as you could see, Aaron Banks and Deebo and Juszczyk are the offensive players of note are gone. Defensively, my goodness gracious, there's some names that have been famous for this team that are now gone, but a famous face that was gone is now back, and Robert Saleh is there as the defensive coordinator, a name that I know Niners fans were clamoring for the minute the Jets mysteriously fired him after just 5 games last year. So I guess I ask you the overarching question of, what are the Niners doing right now, Matt?
Well, and I was going to bring up Robert Saleh because he's probably needed now more than ever. I mean, it's going to be a defense that a lot of new faces on that defense. There will be 2 new starting linebackers. The defensive line, the only carryover really is Nick Bosa. I think the defensive backfield is semi set, but it's funny. I mean, they have added some guys, but frankly, there are guys that I had to go to Pro Football Reference to just kind of check on and see who the heck they were. So I don't know that they brought in any starters to replace the guys who are leaving. Now, they tried to kind of soften the blow even a year ago by drafting people where they thought that there would be needs now. So they drafted, their first pick was Ricky Pearsall, our wide receiver, anticipating that Deebo Samuel wasn't going to be around. Then it was Renardo Green, a cornerback, in anticipation of Charvarius Ward. It was Dominic Pooney, an offensive lineman, in thinking that Aaron Banks wasn't going to be around. And then with Talanoa Hufanga expected perhaps to leave, they got Malik Mustafa, a safety. So their first 4 draft picks from last year were all kind of taken with their eye for a year from now, meaning right now, when they wouldn't be able to re-sign those guys. And sure enough, like I said, I don't think the only one that I think was really kind of 50-50, or the 49ers really thought they had a chance to re-sign, was Dre Greenlaw. But coming off the injuries, man, the 49ers were bit by that injury bug last year. I think the price just went too high for them with his background, the torn Achilles and barely even playing last year.
Matt Maiocco here on the Rich Eisen Show. Is it fair to draw a straight line between the decisions that are made now, or, as you pointed out, last year at the draft, in advance of knowing these decisions were going to be made now at these positions, that there is a plan, there was a plan in place? Can you draw a straight line from that all the way through to the fact that Brock Purdy needs to be paid right now, Matt?
I do believe so, yes, because, what they've tried to do, last year, they'll be very upfront in telling you, and they'll tell you without asking, they spent more cash last year than any team in the league. And so, that cash spending, they spent about $85 million over the cap. So they had to look to their future finances and their future cap standing. That's why they're right now they're going to have $77 million in dead money, and so that's clearing money for the future. And right now they're in good shape in the cap for this year. But I think the thinking was if Brock Purdy or when Brock Purdy signs this long-term extension, the big money won't kick in for another couple years down the road, and that's when they need that salary cap space. So a lot of the moves they're making now certainly aren't to make their team better for the 2025 season. It's just to make them more financially responsible, I think, for the future when Brock Purdy's money kicks in, when they still have guys like Warner and Kittle, and they're going to try to redo Kittle this offseason. So they still have some big money guys left on that contract and more big money guys to come, such as Purdy.
So let's talk about Brock Purdy, Matt Maiocco. Where do things stand right now, and where do you think they're going and headed?
Yeah, right now there's not much activity with them, and they both sides express the desire to have this thing done, not necessarily by the start of the new league year, but certainly for the start of the offseason program. One of the major distractions from last season was the contract situations that were hanging out there with Trent Williams and with Brandon Ayuk. So those are two guys where there was a lot of distractions, and the season got off on kind of a bad note because of it. Trent Williams was a holdout. Brandon Ayuk was a hold in. And those are just, that's a left tackle and a wide receiver. So with their quarterback, they have to have him in the building, being a leader. I think they have to, they got to put their money where their mouth is. I mean, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have both said that they expect Brock Purdy to be the quarterback for as long as they're with the team. So in order to do that, I don't think you can cut any corners, and I don't think you can pay him like a top 18 quarterback or a top 16 or 14. If you think he's the guy, then they have to pay him. But as we've seen this offseason with the cost cutting and the belt tightening and all these guys leaving, they also want to get a deal that they don't come to regret a year or two down the road.
So does it start with a 5? And did the Niners opening foray, as reported, start with a 4?
That to me seems really difficult to believe, because the last thing you want to do is give Brock Purdy an insulting early offer. And when you see so many of those quarterback contracts starting with a 5, I would think that that's where it starts. I mean, you look at what Brock Purdy has done. I mean, he was 4th in the MVP voting back in 2023. You won't hear anybody in the building talking any smack about him, anything about his limitations. It's all about what he can do. All that other talk is from people outside the building. So I'm still of the opinion that where both sides want to get something done, I think there's enough quarterbacks who have signed extensions or new deals that gives them the parameters of what they can look at. Josh Allen's contract helps. Certainly Dak Prescott's contract helps. And we could go down the line of Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love. I mean, all those guys. And I mean, it's obviously some of those guys are on a Hall of Fame track. But Brock Purdy has done everything the 49ers have asked of him. I mean, they rescued he rescued the organization, because nobody's been talking about Trey Lance and trading up to number 3 and giving away all that future draft capital to go get a quarterback who was never, the team starter, because Brock Purdy stepped in and really helped the 49ers out in that case. So I think it'll get done because there's a desire on both sides to get it done. And frankly, I don't think the 49ers don't have a plan B. It's not like these quarterbacks are falling out of trees that they can just say, oh, you know what, let's move on to plan B and get somebody else. Brock Purdy's the guy, and Kyle Shanahan has made that very clear.
NBC Sports Bay Area, Matt Maiocco here on the Rich Eisen Show. So let's finish up our conversation with what the plan is for 2025 for the 49ers. And, listen, I understand the sky is falling for a lot of Niner fans right now, but the Rams 2 off seasons ago, the team president, Kevin Demoff, sent a letter to season ticket holders that essentially said, everybody be patient, and gave an indication that a reset was coming of some sort. And I'm paraphrasing here. Rams made the playoffs twice in a row since that, including that very year. The Bills last year, Bills fans were freaking out about some of the names that were being let go from their championship years, and everyone wondering if the window was closing. We saw Josh Allen won the MVP, and the Bills had a terrific Super Bowl run in them. And the Niners do have what those teams have, which is a front office and a coach that's been together for a while and knowing what they can do. So that's my long-winded setup of handing it off to you and saying, what does 2025 in your estimation look like from the 49ers point of view, Matt?
Well, let's look at this roster. I mean, we're not going to go through the whole roster, but this team has Christian McCaffrey. It has Trent Williams. It has George Kittle. It has Nick Bosa. It has Fred Warner. And then they signed Diamador Lenore, a very good young cornerback, to an extension partway through the season last year. So it's not like this is a tear down, rebuild. They have no good players on the team. That said, they have a lot of work to do. And whether it's just being very judicious and finding the right guys in free agency, they're not going to make some guy they go out and get at this point the highest paid player at his particular position. But then they also have a lot of draft capital. And so with 11 draft picks, they have to connect in the draft. But I know inside the building, they think that they still have the pieces in place, the nucleus to compete. Outside the building, there's a lot of skepticism, and rightfully so. So now it's a matter of them following through on their plan and making those draft picks work.
Now, I know they took Demarcus Robinson from the Rams, in a 2-year deal. But again, the Niner fans that I know of, like, they want Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean? Like, that's the Ram receiver they would be interested in, right?
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, too, another one of those high-priced players is Brandon Ayuk, who they just signed a year ago to an extension. Now there's some uncertainty about him as far as if his availability is going to be right there at the start of the season coming out the ACL. But I don't know that the 49ers are going to add a big-name guy. I mean, they feel good about Juwan Jennings. They drafted Ricky Pearsall, anticipating, that they would need a receiver this year. Ayuk's situation is up in the air. I'm sure they'll see if Cooper Kupp is a possibility. The problem is they were burnt so much with injuries last year. I think it's why that they didn't overextend for Dre Greenlaw. It's why they didn't overextend for Joey Bosa. And so, in keeping with that line of thinking, they probably wouldn't go after Cooper Kupp just because it's one of those buyer beware situations with the past injuries and where the 49ers have been bitten in the past.
All right, not to say, that you're the voice of reason that 49er fans need to hear from as their psychiatrist, but what is your message? Because what are you saying to your friends who are blowing up your phone saying, tell me something good, and the Niner fans who do the same for me? Like, what's your message, Matt?
It's jarring. It's absolutely jarring for the 49er fans to see so many guys leave the building. I mean, my message, if you're going to try to put any kind of positive spin on this, as far as what the 2025 season holds, it's that they were 6-11 last year. They finished 2 games behind the Arizona Cardinals, last place in the NFC West. So they did have to change up the roster. I think they did have to get younger. They have to get healthier. So I will see. I mean, they're not winning the offseason. That's for sure. They're not winning, the open negotiating period, but we'll see. I mean, the 49ers and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have done a good job in the past of putting together their plan and building that roster. So, I mean, I guess you'd have to, at this point, Rich, it's a leap of faith to think that this team can get back up there into contention in the NFC.
Yeah, certainly the Rams have constituted themselves in the last couple of weeks as well, right? And the way that the Eagles looked and the way that the Commanders have gotten stronger, right? With Adam Peters taking one of their guys in Debo. right? I mean, that's the way you got to look at it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, a year ago, if you'd asked me about the NFC, I would have said, man, the way the Eagles fell off the cliff at the end of the 2023 season, yeah, the 49ers and all those other teams don't have to worry about them. But man, how things change. So, all it takes, like you mentioned with the Rams, I mean, they got one of the best defensive lines I've seen, and they come at you in waves. And 2 years ago, none of those guys were even on the team, and they're all young guys. So with a draft deep in defensive linemen, that's the 49ers' biggest need. They have to cash in with 2 or 3 of those guys to step in and make an immediate impact. And then all of a sudden, Robert Saleh's job looks a lot easier, and the 49ers team looks a lot better.
Matt, really appreciate you answering our bat signal, and look for more of our calls and texts to come back on. Appreciate it.
Always my pleasure, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You better. That's NBC Sports Bay Area's Matt Maiocco here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.